Good evening or good morning if you're joining us from Asia, or a very deep good night to you if you're joining us from Europe. My name is Jeannie Hallisey, and this is the second in the series of panel discussions as part of the speaker forum for the Burma Spring Benefit Film Festival. We're very happy to have with us our very esteemed guests who are among the vanguard of leaders who have been fighting for human rights, for social justice, for peace and for security, for civil society organizations and ethnic communities across Myanmar for decades. We'd like to warmly welcome our panelists that include Khin Ohmar. She is the founder of Progressive Voice, which is an advocacy organization that has been working both within Myanmar with its extensive network of civil society organizations, as well as with ASEAN member states. She is the recipient of the Anna Lindh Prize for her courage to fight injustices, and she shared the Vital Voices Global Leadership Award for Human Rights with the Shan Women Action Network, Charm Tong. Khin Ohmar has been working tirelessly on behalf of those who have no voice to provide that voice for more than 3 decades in Myanmar. We're also honored to have with us, joining from Bangkok in the early morning, Debbie Stoddard. She is known to many of you if you have been watching the news about Myanmar, because she's often interviewed on major global broadcasters. She is the founder of the ASEAN Alternative Network, which is called ALTSEAN. ALTSEAN tracks government policies, including issues related to land grabbing and human rights abuses, foreign investment projects, and they work specifically with marginalized communities, including indigenous groups, women, and youth. They also have an extensive training program that empowers ethnic women to become leaders of their country in Myanmar. Debbie is also the Secretary General of the FIDH, which is the Federation for Human Rights. She has also been working in Myanmar for well over 30 years. We are waiting to be joined by our other panelist, Wei Wei Nu, who hopefully will be joining us shortly. And we're going to get started right away, beginning with Khin Ohmar. Khin Ohmar, these have been very difficult times for all of you, not only for your countrymen, but for those of you that have been working in the front lines of human rights for many years. It is almost unimaginable that here we are in 2021, revisiting the kind of issues that people like yourself have been working on for such a prolonged period of time, not knowing that this would be a kind of a repeat of history, if not worse. The numbers are grim. The Assistance Association for Political Prisoners, a nonprofit organization that documents arrests, detentions, sentencing, as well as disappearances in Myanmar, is currently putting the number of arrested at 4,642. The number of killed since the military coup seized power in February is 847. And they have also reported about the trend of hostage taking, targeting activists, people who are participating in the civil disobedience movement, members of ethnic parties, and they have tracked 76 hostages currently, including members of elected parliamentarians from the National League for Democracy. Khin Ohmar, if you don't mind, I'd like to just share one particular graphic that struck me quite deeply when I saw this. This was a graphic of the map of your country, of Myanmar, indicating that among those that have been killed, 73 are children. Children have been killed by uniformed personnel in Myanmar, including members of the armed forces or police or other armed members that have been organized under the auspices of one of those 2 institutions. This is something that really affected me when I saw this graphic initially. I'd like you to just begin by giving us an overview since the military seized power in this coup, preempting the installation of the duly elected government of the National League for Democracy and other ethnic leaders. What is the human rights situation in your country now?
Thank you, Jeannie, also for sharing this graphic as well. As you already shared the latest, like a number of that you received from the Assistance Association for Political Prisoner, then the number of people who are killed just continue to rise every day. Even yesterday, in Irrawaddy division, in one village, the military just came and like indiscriminately started shooting, and that killed, including a child of 4 years old. So among those 73 children, now it's going to be 74, and this 4-year-old is the youngest. As you know, 4 months passed already since this military attempted this unlawful coup. One thing is like the demonstrations, the peaceful protests are across the country in everywhere in like 95% of the geography, and people continuing with that peaceful demonstrations every day, even as we speak. Mostly the young people, and also that we see the young women are actually at the forefront alongside their male counterparts. But of course that we see the military continues with using the brute force and violence and carrying on with the nationwide terror campaign against the people. I mean, as you know, I was on the ground in 1988 when the same military brutally cracked down on our peaceful demonstrations. They were brutal for sure back then. But after one whole generation passed, many, especially among the international actors, especially during the last 9 years, thought this military has changed. Of course, we know that they haven't. But of course, this past 4 months is the wake-up call to the international community, to all of us, that this military is not only has not changed, but in fact, I would say they are even worse than the 1988. What we see now in the past 4 months, that those the cruelty, the cruel actions on the ground, you see them that they are really enjoying what they're doing to the people, all these brutality. The killings are executional style with the using even like a heavy war weaponries, and also indiscriminate targeting with the deliberate aim to kill. Yeah, I think this is something that we need to really look into. Why the elected representative of the country, the elected members of the representative from the election are already calling out, declaring this military as a terrorist group. They snatch bodies of those that they kill, mutilate them, even carry out, illegal autopsies, and remove not only the evidence of the bullets from the bodies, but when the bodies return to the families, the organs are missing. They contacted the cremations even without their family's permission, even just 2 days ago, it happened. And they are also extorting the money from the families in exchange of the bodies to be returned. Yeah, it's really inhumane that I got to the point of thinking, like comparing with the 88. Yes, they were so brutal that time that even the bodies that of the protesters that were still alive were burned. They were cremated. But now that we are seeing that in the daylight, broad daylight, with the social media, that the whole world is watching, and they are committing these egregious crimes. And I think something that we also have to see is that this military, in the past 10 years, they are the one who benefited the most from this quote unquote democratic transition. Yeah. Right now, what we're seeing is this is the same military who are actually committing all of these crimes, and to the extreme point now that they already sentenced 50 people to death penalty, and some are young, under 18 years old. Yeah. So there is no sign of abating of these crimes that they are continuing committing. We are also receiving the credible reports of the acts of sexual and gender-based violence against the women, and also the LGBTIQ persons in detention. And I have to say that I've been very worried since the arrest of the young women, since I think that the end of the first month, the second month of the coup. I have been worried so much of that this is going to come, because in my activist life, I met with a number of survivors of this military rape and gang rape from the different ethnic communities, from the Kachin to the Karen to Lahu to even to the Rohingya women 3 years ago. So I know this is going to come. And so it's really very worrying for me to see that there are still many young women are still missing, that the family members have no idea where they are. Like you said, the cases of abduction of the families are rising. And that gives even more another level of the anxiety for those who are continuing to resist and define this military's violence. And especially the civil disobedience movement members who are continuing to not cooperating with the military, not going back to work. And it's worrying for them. It's like, what is going to happen to their families? Yes. And like, like one of the members, one of the mother, a mother of one of the youth activists, in fact, was not only like a brutally beaten up and arrested, but she's now sentenced to 3 years imprisonment because they couldn't find him. So this is where things are at the moment. But just one thing that I want to quickly point out before I close this is we are facing not only the human rights crisis unfolding, but also the humanitarian crisis, along with this, the military violence, man-made disaster. Mm-hmm. We're seeing all of these crimes that I have shared with you and with all of you. This is not new to the ethnic nationalities of our country. The various ethnic minority communities, from the Kachin all the way to the Rohingya, they've been facing these violent crimes from the military for generations. These are not new to them. But with this military coup, the intensification of the violence by the military are actually reaching extreme heights in the ethnic areas. With this illegal junta waging war on multiple fronts of the ethnic areas in the Karen, Kachin, and more recently in Karenni and southern Shan states. So now we're seeing another humanitarian catastrophe with a new displacement of 150,000 or even more now. So I think this is another very serious situation that we are facing, because the reality is this same military is the one who's been blocking before and now also blocking the humanitarian aid to reach to these most needy people. Not only that they are blocking the humanitarian aid, they are actually killing, shooting the civilians who are trying to help out each other. So this is where the situation in the country at the moment. But let me just close with one last point. In spite of all of this brute force and violence, the people of Myanmar, to my amaze, they continue to be so firm with their determination, continue to define this regime, and they are so determined to bring democracy back. And this is something we need the international community more than ever before to support the people of Myanmar, to end this military tyranny, to bring democracy back. Thank you.
Thank you, Khin Ohmar. We've now been joined by our third panelist. We're again honored to have her with us, Wei Nu. She is the founder of the Women's Peace Network Arakan and Justice for Women, that is focused on peace building across Myanmar with all genders, ethnicities, and faiths. And Justice for Women is a network of women lawyers. Wei Nu herself is a lawyer, and they provide legal counsel for indigent women across the country. She, like our other panelists, is the recipient of numerous awards, including the End Peace Award. She was named by Time magazine as a next generation leader, and she received the Hillary Clinton Award at Georgetown University in 2018. For those that have not followed Myanmar closely in recent years, one of the groups that you have likely heard about if you are a news consumer are the Rohingya, who have been described by, among other things, as one of the most persecuted groups in the world, a stateless group that has systematically been oppressed, has been marginalized, and has been brutalized. So you are probably familiar with the crimes against humanity that have also been described as genocide against the Rohingya that resulted in a mass exodus of what is now the world's largest refugee camp. 1 million Rohingya fled their land in Western Myanmar, which is known as Rakhine or Arakan state. Wei Nu is among the voices that has been leading that issue on the global stage. And interestingly, Khin Ohmar and Debbie were one of the few voices at that time when it was not popular to speak up for the Rohingya, who also called attention to these atrocities. Wei Nu, can you tell us, has the fact that the Myanmar military enjoyed impunity from the crimes that were committed against the Rohingya people actually enabled them to continue with these brutal actions now that we're seeing across the country?
Thank you, Jenny. It's been an honor to join by this wonderful, inspiring sisters, and I call them auntie as well. You know, they have been instrumental in my past decades of work on advocacy on human rights, as well as, you know, advocacy on ending impunity for the Burmese military, and also the work in Myanmar. So I'm very honored and privileged to be here. So to answer your question, Jenny, I think it is not just that the impunity that the military in Myanmar enjoyed for the violence against Rohingya, genocide against Rohingya, but also historical impunity that they have been enjoying for decades. They have done similar actions against many ethnic communities in Myanmar ever since we've got independence in 1948. You know, they have done terrible things, you know, genocidal act against the ethnic Karen, Shan, and many other ethnic communities, as well as slaughtered students and politicians in 1988, and many, you know, continue to prosecute against the political dissent or ethnic communities for decades. When we have these political transitions in 2010 and 11, one thing that we have missed was the process of transitional justice. And that failure to have a transitional justice processes has actually enabled or emboldened the military to commit the genocidal crimes against the Rohingya and continue to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity against many other ethnic communities. And this impunity ongoing today, and they're continuing with the same patterns and same behavior, attitude against the entire country, ordinary people, students, young people, killing children as young as 5. So, you know, this act is accumulations of this decades-long impunity that the military has enjoyed. And that is why it is critical for us to do this advocacy on ending impunity and holding these military leaders accountable for their past crimes. And that's the only way we thought we could end the crisis in Myanmar. And that's what we have tried so hard. And, you know, we all know, I mean, 3 of us here have been doing this work tirelessly, day and night, and try to convince the world how important is ending impunity for the military. But it was extremely hard to convince the world that it is, you know, to hold these military leaders, the importance of holding these military leaders accountable. And now we're seeing the results. You know, now we're continue to see the continuations of crimes. And if we fail this time again, you know, we're not going to see a peace in Myanmar or democracy or anything anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Wei Nu. This is a good time for me to segue to Debbie. And ASEAN puts out routine reports on the update on crimes, the human rights situation, on the political situation. And one of the charts that they recently printed out, I would like to share the screen if you don't mind, Debbie. This is an ASEAN graph, quite interesting because it is actually—
Sorry, yes. Yeah,
it's actually showing an increase in violence this year over last year. Debbie, can you just talk a little bit about this, and we'll segue into your take on why this Myanmar military seems to be so impervious to the repeat condemnations in the international community, to the imposition of sanctions. Where do they get their financial resources to keep going?
Thanks, Judy. And yeah, it's amazing. It's always an inspiring and enjoyable time, and I know we're talking about serious stuff, but you know, it's a special time that all sisters, all of us are on the same panel and having a chance to talk across different continents. I just wanted to explain that this graph is charting the number of incidents of armed attacks which either targeted or harmed civilians in Burma, from 424 in the entire year of 2011 when transition started, till 1,024 incidents that took place in almost all parts of the country in 2020. What's really scary is that if you look at the yellow part, you'll see that for the yellow numbers, the yellow line covers just the months of February, March, and April of that year. And we've seen that in the first 3 months of the coup, since between the 1st of February and the end of April, we saw 1,594 incidents, which is in the space of 3 months, we've seen 150% jump on the entire year of 2020 alone. And this has taken place in every single state and region of the country. So in the month of May, since then, there's been nearly 600 such incidents. So we are actually seeing an exponential escalation of violence by the military junta, because they are willing to kill as many people as possible in order to gain territorial, political, and economic control of the country. So what's happening here? Why is the military so empowered to do this? Besides the flawed 28 constitution, the 2008 constitution, the military actually has access to foreign exchange reserves and increasing national budget for the military. So the military actually owns companies. So for example, activists in Burma had started campaigns to boycott military products because the military produces sports goods. They have they produce beer. Myanmar beer is produced by a military company, and so there are all these military conglomerates. But now they've taken over the government account. So that means government revenues for the country is going to be under the control of the military. This is why the National Unity Government that was formed by the Parliamentary Committee representing 76% of elected MPs and different ethnic groups have actually called on companies, on foreign companies and local companies to stop paying money into those bank accounts, stop paying revenues and taxes to those accounts, but to put it in trust until democracy is restored. Now, we need to be aware that some of the biggest foreign exchange earners for the country come from natural gas, from ruby, jade, and metals and minerals, just like even uranium and also forestry. So all these are natural resources, and there's been an ongoing campaign in the US to actually campaign for Chevron to stop paying money to the military junta. Now, the protests have been quite effective. The advocacy and the protests have been effective because a joint venture involving Chevron and Total, the French oil company, agreed to suspend payments directly to the military. But that's not good enough because these companies actually have much bigger investments than that. So the decision that they made a couple of weeks ago is only a drop in the ocean compared to the huge amounts of money that the military will have at their disposal if we don't freeze the flow of foreign exchange revenues. So at the local level, the military is quite happy to destroy the local economy. In fact, retail banking is on the brink of collapse. we've seen 2,000 bank branches of 44 banks shut down. Now, that's actually a huge number for a country like Burma because not many people actually have bank accounts in the country compared to, say, the US. So this is, and we've seen the military shut down electricity and water to several towns and locations with which they've been bombarding with airstrikes. So they're actually bombing towns of civilians. And they're quite, and when local residents in Yangon and young people in Mandalay tried to have food donations for poor people who haven't been able to work because of the coup, they were arrested for giving out free food. So we could already see the military doesn't really care about the people. In fact, they feel quite comfortable about wrecking the domestic economy because at the back is they expect more and more foreign exchange reserves to be flowing directly to them through natural resources. And what are they going to do with that money? They're going to use more, they're going to buy more weapons. They're going to bomb more people. They're going to they're going to continue using artillery to bombard homes and using rocket-propelled grenades to actually fire directly into homes, just to intimidate, to kill, and to terrorize the local population. And Jeannie, you were talking with Omar about young children being killed. This is a very troubling situation because if you actually read the reports of those incidents, most of those children were nowhere near a protest. They were at home, they were playing in their front yard, and they were shot by snipers. In one case in Mandalay, a little child was actually sitting in her father's lap when the military broke in and aimed their gun at her and shot her dead as she was in her father's arms. So you can already see that it appears there is a deliberate attempt to target children in order to terrorize and strike fear into protesters and any potential supporters of the movement. This is why we really have to work hard to freeze the flow of foreign exchange into the hands of the military. The military grabbed power also because they were concerned about their economic interests being undermined by a second NLD government. So we really need to be quite aware. Lots of movements forward in the US. The US government sanctioned a number of military companies, but I think finally we need to go back to what the 2003 Burma Freedom and Democracy Act did, which was to freeze all international financial flows into the country, into the banking system, in order to hurt this military. That's what the people of Burma want, and this is how we have to back them up.
Thank you so much, Debbie. This paints a very sobering picture because I think that given the fact that we no longer see the massive peaceful protests in the streets, people are less aware that, in fact, there are perhaps even more severe human rights abuses taking place right now, as described by you, Khin Ohmar. Certainly the military attacks in ethnic communities, including airstrikes that are targeting not only members of the ethnic armed organizations, but tens of thousands of civilians in these ethnic areas. Today's report in the Irrawaddy publication alone, it was like reading a litany of sinister acts that one doesn't realize is actually taking place. From Tanintharyi region, a village administrator shot outside his house. In Kaya State, a villager who went home, who had been displaced from the violence and went home to get food, was shot dead. In Chin State, a policeman who had switched sides with the civilians was shot in the head by a sniper. In Shan State, there is fighting. In Sagaing region, there is fighting. I mean, literally across the country. I think that is important for people to understand the situation now, Khin Ohmar. And before we go to questions, I just wanted to ask each of you once, what is the response that you are asking from the international community? I know that each of you in your positions as human rights defenders give testimony, is what it would be called, at the United Nations Human Rights Council. You routinely meet with envoys who are foreign diplomats, with members of the EU and the US government. The UN Special Rapporteur to Myanmar, Tom Andrews, was recently quoted as saying that the people of Myanmar need not only words, but support by supportive action. The special envoy to Myanmar, Christine Bergener, has not had access to visit Myanmar. The ASEAN, which for those who are not familiar, is a regional bloc comprised of 10 member states in Southeast Asia, was tasked with being a go-between to try to find a solution. But this is almost, I was on the webinar with you, Khin Ohmar, when they met. This was almost 6 weeks ago. And really, it's been nothing but talk with little action. They sent 2 envoys and only met with the military junta, with Min Aung Hlaing. Just to clarify what Debbie mentioned, the NUG, the National Unity Government, is the parallel government that was formed, comprised of those elected parliamentarians as well as ethnic leaders and other civil society leaders who have now gotten ministry positions. Khin Ohmar, starting with you, what is the United Nations doing or failing to do effectively?
Well, Jenny, you have already known, for myself and Debbie, and of course, we've been advocating to the United Nations for a long time, yeah. And in fact, we always bring the ground realities to them, and even giving them the early warning signs that they need to do something to prevent, something, before happen. But, all along, the United Nations continue to fail. They failed the people of Burma for a long time, even under the previous military regime. And then carrying on in the last 10 years, they failed the Rohingya people 3 years ago. But now they're failing again because, you don't see the Secretary General, taking the concrete actions. You see him just keep coming up with the concerning, statements, which doesn't do anything on the ground. And the Security Council continue to be, having that deadlock, between the China-Russia dynamics, which again is not, it's not acceptable for the people of Myanmar. Let's put it that way, because the reality is what we want is the United Nations to do the maximum that they could, within their mandate and authority as the Security Council to do. But we're not seeing that either. And I think one thing, I mean, like I said, the people are risking their lives and the lives of their loved ones and the communities every day. Yes, you're right. We don't see the cross-countrywide, nationwide street protest like we saw 2 months ago. But there are many creative ways that people continue to be defined, including the street protest. But the current UN response in particular is not nearly enough. And I don't even want to talk about the ASEAN, to be very honest, is because
we'll leave that to Debbie.
The people of Myanmar, Burma have no faith in ASEAN, what they're doing, to be honest. Yeah.
I'd like to turn now to Wei Wei. What would your response be given what you witnessed with the really unimaginable violence that we know has now been well documented by a number of international human rights organizations, including Human Rights Watch, etc., about the clear intentional crimes against humanity against the Rohingya? There has been some analysis that this has been a kind of an awakening among the Bama, who are one of the ethnic groups, the dominant ethnic group, who have largely been not just immune to having any empathy for the Rohingya, but actively participated in hate mongering and disinformation to fuel the fires of divisiveness and culpability upon the Rohingya. There's been some talk about an awakening, a certain reconciliation that these protests have led to. How would you respond to that?
Thank you for the question, Jenny. It's very important question. Before answering that question, so I'd like to touch a little bit on on the international response. One thing that I have noticed and very disappointing that I've been seeing is that the world is treating the military coup in Myanmar as a normal coup. But in reality, this is not a normal coup. The coup has been done by the military leaders who are who have committed the international crimes such as genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. And these crimes, the accountability for this crime has been already laid. On top of that, they stage a coup. And the strategy in terms of response to the coup should be really stop holding the perpetrators accountable for the crime first. It is extremely wrong to treat as a normal coup and then try to engage with them like ASEAN has been doing, and that approach has to be changed. So just want to add that perspective here. Going back to the movement in Myanmar, you are right. There has been awakening. There has been, it is like eye-opening for entire country. The fact that the military staged the coup and continue to behave the behavior that they have been, acting forever against the ethnic communities and against Rohingya. So seeing that repeating to themselves, it's been eye-opening, and people started to realize, the crimes that happen against the Rohingya could be true, and they started to sympathize and think deeply and started to show their empathy and sympathy. And even, we have seen, organizations and student organizations, political leaders, civil society leaders started to apologize to the Rohingya. So this has been incredible. Out of this darkness, I think I see this as a hope, a light for the future of the country. This awakening will, I truly hope that this awakening, will move or will lead to somewhere a better future for everyone, where we all want to see an inclusive federal democratic future where Rohingyas' rights will be equally respected and accepted. And that's what I think I'm hoping to see. And I would really like to see this awakening, this notions, the societal notions will translate to the policy making level and will really implement that policy, as we fight for the democracy.
Thank you, Wei Wei. Before we turn to Debbie, if I may, I would just like to share, to me, this image is extremely, extremely compelling. Here we see Rohingya refugee women who have most certainly endured unbelievable abuse at the hands of the Myanmar military in a camp, destitute, traumatized by the violence they have endured, giving the three-finger salute, which is the emblematic signal in support of the current movement in Myanmar for democracy. And here is, if ever, a chance to create a bridge to examine a conscience of a nation that not only turned away from these people, but condemned them for being people who survived the violence. Here they are giving a three-finger salute. Quite remarkable to me. Debbie, I'd like to turn to you now because you have a lot of expertise in working with ASEAN. I would like to know what you make of this ASEAN 5-point plan that was laid out, and whether this is a futile exercise. ASEAN has a long history of giving lip service to political ideals, but is essentially a trade bloc. It is one of the more prosperous global trade blocs. And there wasn't much teeth behind the ASEAN human rights initiatives that came out. So what is going on with ASEAN? Are they able to reach the generals? What credence do you put in that?
Jeannie, you said I have expertise in dealing with ASEAN. I think like Omar and others, I have painful experiences dealing with ASEAN. One of the things we need to understand is that the UN bodies, for example, have differed to ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is a regional bloc of 10 countries, including Burma. And in most time, whether it's at the UN Human Rights Council, the UN Security Council, or UN General Assembly, the UN would defer, say, oh, what does ASEAN think? We want ASEAN to take the lead on it. And very often, so when we go talk to the EU, the UN, or the US, it would be a case of, oh, let's see what ASEAN is doing. Let's wait for ASEAN. Let's wait and see for ASEAN. And actually, that's been the biggest problem. Don't wait for ASEAN, because ASEAN is a disaster. So what have we got here? This coup happened on the 1st of February, and ASEAN finally gets its act together to have a meeting with and invite only the general of the illegal junta to Jakarta on April the 24th. Look, if you were ASEAN, if I was ASEAN, we would have that meeting on the 24th of February, not the 24th of April. And then they come up with this 5-point consensus, which is a little bit weak, but hey, okay, this is ASEAN, don't expect too much from them, but at least they said, please de-escalate violence, stop attacking people. And Senior General Min Aung Hlaing says, oh yes, thank you. And then he goes back to Burma, to Naypyidaw, and then he says, yes, we will follow, we'll implement the 5-point consensus after we've restored order into the country. Restoring order means killing a few tens of thousands of people, bombing more civilians, so that everyone's too destroyed to be able to resist. That's the view of the military in terms of what restoring order is, and ASEAN keeps quiet, and then in the week after the ASEAN meeting, the military launched over 60 airstrikes on civilian communities, and ASEAN kept quiet. And finally, ASEAN interferes at the UN General Assembly by trying to block language that calls for a global arms embargo against the illegal Burmese junta. And ASEAN saying, oh, no, don't put that in. What the hell? I'm saying what the hell because actually I mean much worse than that. But since we are on, I'm not going to, we're online, yeah. I'm going to restrain myself. But the thing is this, if you don't stop the flow of arms and foreign exchange to the military, it's going to do so much worse. And ASEAN states are the frontline states. They are the ones who are going to be hit with refugees. They are the ones who are going to have to deal with this threat to human security. But they're being ridiculous. They're being illogical because ASEAN governments at this time are anti-democratic. They don't want, what they fear is an uprising, a popular resistance in their countries, like what happened in Burma.
Yes.
So that's what they're doing. But the one of the horrible things that happened was ASEAN finally got its act together to send the ASEAN Secretary General and a representative of the current chair of ASEAN, which is Brunei, to Burma. And what did they do there? According to the 5-point consensus that both ASEAN and the junta agreed on, they were supposed to talk to all stakeholders, everybody, yes, including the National Unity Government, all the other stakeholders, armed groups, etc. But the ASEAN delegation just went there, sat in their comfortable ornate seats and had a chat with the illegal military junta and no one else.
Yes.
This is why within days of that meeting, the military felt quite confident and enabled to go and kill 20 people, including a child, not so far from Yangon.
Yes.
So I think we need to understand, don't wait for ASEAN. In fact, do exactly the opposite of what ASEAN says, because they've been paralyzed by the COVID pandemic. There's no leadership and no genuine consensus in ASEAN. And what ASEAN is doing is even undermining the principles in its own charter. So forget about that. Let's get the UN Security Council, the UN and the UN General Assembly motivated and mobilized, we need to actually hit the military where it hurts. They are afraid of intervention by the Security Council, and we should actually be pushing no matter what. Even if Russia and China is on the Security Council, there are also other states on that council, and they should be actually pushing as hard as they can, because we cannot afford several more decades of this situation. This is what happened in 1988. Omar is part of the 88 generation. I was that the 88 uprising became the spark for you, Ginny, and me, and many other people to be involved in the movement. That movement was violently suppressed, and we had 30 years of military dictatorship. We can't afford that anymore.
Indeed, indeed, just today it was reported that the National Unity Government has stated that they have no faith whatsoever now in ASEAN being any form of effective go-between because of the complete neglect of even attempting to interact with them. You mentioned China, Debbie. That's going to lead us to our first question. I'd like to now open up the forum. Part of what we're doing here is giving you an opportunity to ask questions to these remarkable human rights defenders. Again, these women are on the front line of human rights advocacy for Myanmar. Between them, I was calculating earlier, I think you have 75 years of experience right in front of you, folks. So please take advantage and ask the questions. I will be seeing them in the chat. You mentioned China, Debbie. This has come up in the first question that we fielded from Greg Butensky. The question is that the military, you mentioned that the military doesn't seem to care about the health of the local economy. How about the Chinese government, given their massive economic interests in the country? Do you see any hope that the Chinese might change their policy in supporting the junta? Who would like to take that? I'll leave it to Deb. You want to go for that first? And then please, audience, please ask any question for any panelist or any comment that you'd like to share.
I know Omar and Weiri want to also add to this.
Okay.
Now, China actually has benefited immensely from 10 years of political and economic stability in Burma. They've actually made a lot of money out of it. And what has been quite horrifying to China is that within 4 months, since the 1st of February, actually within 100 days of the coup, which we have to emphasize is not complete. This coup is not complete. It is still in progress. Within 100 days, basically all the stability, all the benefits that China got from transition in the country has been basically undermined. The military massacred workers in the key industrial zones, which are also working class neighborhoods. So tens of thousands, more than 100,000 workers from other parts of the country have fled the main industrial zones. Most of these places are, most of the factories are not even functioning anymore. And then the military coup also has created an invisible health crisis, not just for people who are deprived of food or people who are deprived of COVID protection. There's been a secret pandemic happening. The last time we looked, there was a jump at the end of last year from a few hundred cases to over 100,000. Since the coup, we really don't know what's happening. Interestingly, China didn't ask the permission of the regime, but China started providing vaccinations in Kachin state near the China border. So China said the China Red Cross is now in rebel-held territory in north of Burma, vaccinating people. And the military has not dared to launch airstrikes in areas that they know the China Red Cross is present. Why am I saying this? The US has not done that yet. The US needs to actually start cross-border vaccination and PPE testing on the Burmese borders. We already have a lot of ethnic nationality health services that have been operating for decades with very little resources and very effectively. They are the partners. They should be the partners in this program. So I think we need to look at that. But I think in this picture, China understands that the coup is not good for business. It's not good for them. But at the same time, they don't want to take a strong stand for democracy. It's against their values. But they want stability. The phantom menace in this whole picture is Russia. Russia has been the biggest ally of the military junta. The guest of honor at the Armed Forces Day Gala on March the 27th, which was also the launching point of military airstrikes against civilians, was the Deputy Defense Minister of Russia. So I think we also need to understand in this picture Russia's hand and presence, and it's no accident that the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet, actually referred to Burma as a potential serious situation. It's because of Russia, but it's also because of the establishment of many grassroots local militias, people using catapults, crossbows, and even Tumi, which is a handmade single-shot rifle, to resist military invasion of their local communities. So we are actually seeing basically a nationwide civil war unfold. And China doesn't like that. In fact, none of us should.
Yes, and indeed, in addition to the PPE that's so needed, I think, for the COVID pandemic, it's humanitarian assistance for these tens of thousands of ethnic refugees who have fled since the coup. This is in addition to those that had fled prior, the decades prior, and in addition to the 1 million Rohingya in camps in Bangladesh. It's just unfathomable, really, what the human toll of this has been. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the chat. While I'm waiting, again, please ask a question. It could be a comment. I'm going to turn back to Weiwei Nu for a moment and just ask your reflections on the National Unity Government, this parallel government recently formed. What is your analysis of how they are reaching out to be inclusive of the Rohingya? Is this something that you see as a positive indication of what might be to come if there were a federal government that was formed? Can you just comment on that?
Thank you, Jenny. So this been, I guess, the tough questions that I need to answer.
Sure.
I think, the recent development and the National Unity Government's policy paper on the Rohingya, I see that as a positive step towards the goal for the Rohingya as well as for entire country. And this is quite incredible, like before coup, even under the National League for Democracy government, this could have been unimaginable. Right. It has been extremely difficult for us to make the National League for Democracy government led by Aung San Suu Kyi to change their perspective and their positions on the Rohingya, although they were a democratically elected government. But now with the coup, with the awakening of the society, the pressure from the public, yes, from the Generation Z, as well as international pressure, the National Unity Government took another step, a step towards the solution. So I see this as a really unique and positive development and step by the National Unity Government, but this is way far from perfect, yes, because it seems, there has been some promising language include in the policy paper that include the repealing 1982 citizenship law, to some other big, I guess, languages around accountability, and that has to be more refined and clarified as we move forward. Yes. And regarding the citizenship law, it is actually not that the Rohingya needed the law to be repealed to be citizenship. It was even with the previous discriminatory, I guess, the 1982 citizenship law, Rohingya could have been a bona fide citizen of the country if they applied it in a correct manner and fair and just manner. But the application of it, the enforcement of that law was discriminatory. Thus, the many Rohingya were disenfranchised. It was very intentional. It was part of the genocidal process. Now, repealing the citizenship law might not necessarily change Rohingya status much, but it might secure, citizenship status of the Rohingya. But this is not what the questions or root cause is about. The root cause is that the fact that this community, the group, the Rohingya has been systematically erased from Burmese ethnic nationality groups or marginalized in many forms. And as we talk about federal democracy, it is extremely important that Rohingya are recognized as a native, as a group in Rakhine State. Thus, we have equal share in terms of under the federal government in terms of political power to the other powers, including economic resource sharing and so on. And this is critical for the Rohingya to be to have that right to reinstate. Otherwise, we will see continuations of discriminations and apartheid-like conditions, because if they're not regarded as a native group or ethnic nationality of the country, they will continue be treated as second class. Consequently, we will see these continuations of this policy and discriminations, and we'll never be able to end this crisis. So that is the key question that national unity government has to answer. Who belong to these nations, and come up with a fair mindset and fair solutions for the future of the country.
Thank you very much. So it's one step in what is clearly going to be a long journey ahead, and coming from a long journey that the Rohingya have been on. I'd like to turn now back to Khin Ohmar. We have some questions asking, just in a practical way, what can people here in the United States do to support the efforts that your organization and Wailing News and Debbie's are making, or civil society groups as a whole? What can be done on the ground in the US? Are there actions that you're calling for people to participate in? Are there campaigns that they can find out about? Please share that with us.
Thanks for that question, Jenny. But before I respond to that question, I just want to add one point on what Wei has already elaborated in response to the NUG policy paper on the Rohingya community. I think one thing that the NUG will have to take the next step is very practical, doable, also to show their goodwill to the community that they want to actually, they are pledging with this policy paper, is also by not only like engaging and consulting with the community leaders, the Rohingya community leaders, but also to be inclusive, to bring them into the NUG's current work, because after all, this is a revolutionary government, as people are calling them, and also, like representative. I think, there's one thing that we can see, we need to see the action beyond the words. Yeah. I think that the very first action that they can take is to bring the Rohingya community representative, one or two, depends on where the mission, the portfolio will fit, but to bring them in to be a part of the NUG. I think that's very important. Just to come back to what the people in the United States can do, of course there are a lot. Right now, as Debbie already said, to ensure the financial flows, to the junta is cut. We still need a lot more concrete actions to be done. What the Chevron, together with the Total, made this decision to stop the dividends. It's just one step in the right direction. But what we really need them to do is really to stop all of the payments. And also at the same time, we need the U.S. government to put the MOGE, the oil and gas, energy sector ministry, to be on the sanction list. And we also need the U.S. government to put the military's banks to be on the sanction list. I think these are the concrete actions that we need from the people of the United States to send letters, call your representatives, send letters to the Biden administration, let the Congress know, the Senate know that this is the actions that you want them to take. There are a few resolutions floating in Washington, D.C., including the determination of the Rohingya genocide definition. We need that because that will bring the all of our push to hold these military perpetrators to account to the next level, as the U.S. government will actually make the decision on the determination of the genocide, because that will bring another level our push together to hold them accountable. We need the U.S. government also take the leadership in the UN, in the UN platform, a UN stage, including at the Security Council. We need to refer Myanmar situation to the ICC. Or if they don't want it, they can actually set up.
Can you explain the ICC?
Khin Ohmar? Sorry?
For audience members who aren't familiar with the acronym.
International Criminal Court.
Thank you.
There are two platforms, the International Criminal Court and also the current proceeding at the UN highest court, which is the International Court of Justice. We need the US government to join for both. Refer, take the leadership, consolidate the efforts and refer Myanmar to the ICC, or set up the independent international tribunal, and also join the Gambia and the Netherlands and Canada, supporting the Gambia effort at the ICJ. And this is something that the people in the United States can do to make sure that your voice is heard for the US government to take further concrete actions. But also on the ground, you can really also do a lot. I mean, one thing that also we need the US government to do is to really, really encourage the Thai government to go back to who they are, who they were before, which is that they have landed all along in the past decades, generations, that the Thai government and Thai people have lended support to the people of Burma, always fleeing from the military violence. Right now, we need the same kind of support from the Thai government. Of course, this is a COVID time, and we know the Thai people are also very worried of the people entering into their country, even though that they were fleeing from the war, from the airstrikes of the military. But if the US government will convince the Thai government, including even like sharing the COVID-19 resources, including the vaccines, why not? In that case, join the Thai government to help the Myanmar Burma people on the border, opening the humanitarian corridors, things like that. But the US government will need to hear the voices from all of you, from the US people in the United States. But you can still learn a lot of other things by joining all existing campaigns, including the campaigns against Chevron, but also to support the Myanmar people on the ground, including supporting the civil disobedience movement and the civil society who are at risk under the military, by lending all your support, including the financial and other material and technical supports. Thank you.
Excellent. So certainly some very practical steps that citizens of the United States could exercise to try to catalyze some further action from our elected representatives. I'm going to go to Debbie for closing her closing comments. And before I do that, I just wanted to add this, because one thing about Debbie is also known for, despite being a very serious and learned human rights activist, she's also someone who finds some levity and some joy. And I think it's important for us to see that the really creative defiance that we have seen from the people of Myanmar and from women, because this is a women's panel. And Debbie wanted me to share this image. And this is a Tamang protest. Debbie, tell us about this and then give us your closing thoughts.
In Orthodox Burman Buddhist thinking, whatever a woman wears below her waist, like her sarong, in Burmese it's a tamang, is considered spiritually polluting. So a male Buddhist who walks under a tamang will have very bad luck and will be spiritually polluted. So women started this protest of hanging their sarongs on lines across the street. And that really, as you can see, there's a bunch of police acting as though these tamangs are like a dangerous enemy, because the trucks cannot pass under there and they don't like to walk under that. So it slows them down, and then they have to get someone with a stick to try and break this line so that they don't have to walk under these sarongs. And that ended up being breaking a lot of social taboos, because a lot of men in the movement, especially young people, started waving tamangs around as their flag. And I think this is something that's important, that young people and women have been at the forefront of the protest movement and of the political advocacy. This is why the National Unity Government now has more than 50% of non-Burman ethnics, has nearly 30% women, and has the first out gay man as a minister. This is the first time in the history of the country, this National Unity Government. And the National Unity Government had to grapple and be with the Rohingya, had to be more progressive on the Rohingya, had to be more progressive on human rights, because the young people leading the movement demanded it. And I think we need to understand that this is not just a movement against a coup. This is a movement for fundamental transformation, a transformation that we've been working for decades. And it's so important that young people and not so young people, the young at heart in the US, stand in solidarity. Your legislators and your government needs to hear your voice in solidarity to stop financial flows to military junta and to get cross-border aid happening. Cross-border aid happened before, and it was an established system. It can happen again. It needs your voice to create that political will.
Thank you so much, Debbie. And before we close, I would just like to take this moment, because we are with these women human rights defenders.
Hi, Ginny. I'm so sorry. Can I have just my very quick last point?
Of course, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to tell the people in the United States, I share my last point with the colleagues in the United States, that we always touch on the point of the people started to normalize this coup, which is not normal. This is something that we are very, very worried. Yes. We know that for example, the U.S. officials in Burma, we hear that they are already started to engage with the military junta. We want to be very sure this time, because under the Obama administration, the policies of the re-engagement with Burma is not to the point of what the people of Burma were asking. I don't want the Washington DC make the mistake again. I really want to encourage the Washington DC to base the solutions for the Myanmar Burma crisis only on with the people, not with the military junta. I think this is the repeated mistake from the international actors all around. Mm-hmm. They focus the Burma solution on the military junta, who is the major stumbling block for our country to move forward. That's the major mistake that they've been doing. We need them to stop that. From now on, what we want the international community, the United States government, Biden administration, to focus Myanmar Burma crisis on the people of Burma who are sacrificing their lives to defeat this military once and for all. But let's not focus on the solution on this military junta. I just want to make the point. Thank you.
No, that's very excellent. And to punctuate that, one of our colleagues is asking if perhaps any of you or are on your website where they could find, is there a comprehensive statement available that a template that they could use to send to their elected officials?
Not on our website. I'm not so sure, Debbie, you have it, but there is this global movement for democracy in Myanmar, GEM4DM.
In fact, we hosted them last night.
Yes.
The women leaders from that movement were hosted with us last night. So I would encourage folks to go to that website, and their website is there on our speaker panel, which is on our website, the Burma Spring Benefit Film Festival. I'd also like to let folks know that every one of our speakers tonight, if you click on their names on the forum, the speakers panel tab, it will take you directly to their website. I encourage you all to visit their websites if you're interested to learn more about this courageous and vital work that they are doing. In closing, I would just like to honor, because we are a group of women here, and this was Women on the Global Human Rights Front. I would just like to screen share, if you bear with me for a moment, please. And I would like to honor one of the women who is among those that are called the fallen, Daw Min Zin, 36 years old, among those that were the fallen. This evening, we remember you, Daw Min Zin, and we invoke your name. I would also like to share Daw Chichi. Is that coming up? Daw Chichi from Mandalay, 53 years old, killed in March. Tonight, we remember you. We remember your name. You are with us. And finally, I'd like to share one last one. Daw Tin Wei Yi, 59 years old, killed in February. Daw Tin Wei Yi, we remember you and we invoke your name. Once again, please share widely, share with your colleagues, your friends, your neighbors, the link to the Speakers Forum for the Burma Spring Benefit Human Rights Festival, Burma Spring Benefit Film Festival. We'd like to thank, it's been a great honor to have these three outstanding leaders who have really devoted their lives to creating peaceful change, to standing for truth, to empowering nonviolent democracy, justice, transparency, accountability. Khin Ohmar, the founder of Progressive Voice, Wei Wei Nu, the founder of the Women's Peace Network, Arakan, Debbie Stoddard, the founder of ASEAN and FIDH. I'd like to thank our technical support team, which includes Max and Greg behind the scenes. It's a lot of work to put this festival together. And to thank the rest of the team, Gaetano Maeda, Ellen Bruno, Greg Butensky, Kenneth Wong. We have quite a remarkable array of over 39 films available about Burma and from Burma, including films made by Burmese directors. This is an opportunity that is really going to be a mind education for you, an online education for you to watch these films, to join our daily speakers forum. But I'd like to remind people that we are here for a primary objective, which is fundraising. If you have had your heart opened this evening by what you have heard, please open your wallet. Please open your purse, whatever you can give. Even if you are a person of little means, whatever you can give according to your means, all proceeds will go directly to support communities in Myanmar that are part of the nonviolent movement for change, for democracy, for peace and justice. Join us on Monday night for another excellent panel, Ethnic Nationalities and the Rohingya Search for Justice and Peace. We will be joined by Gumsa. He's from the Kachin Alliance, and Yasmin Ullah from the Rohingya Human Rights Network. Our panelists, I see Debbie is giving a 3-finger salute there. I see Weiwei, Khin Ohmar. It's been an honor to listen to all of you. We support you, we stand in solidarity, and we stand in solidarity for nonviolent change in Myanmar. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny, to all of you.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you everyone for joining us.